I don't trust people who lightly say like we are living in not credential society but performance-based society. My name is Mark, and I'm 28 years old this year. Due to family circumstances, I started working as soon as I turned 16. So, my highest level of education is the ninth grade. Only those who have experienced it would understand how society views this. The unreasonable harassment, the looks of sympathy and disdain. It's only recently, as I've gained skills as a plasterer, that I've started to handle things more smoothly. Until then, I was often shaken emotionally, feeling down or angry. Now, the label of a high school dropout is once again about to significantly impact my life. The man who hired me was the president of the construction company, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson passed away last year, and now his son is managing his company as the second-generation president. He studied economics at a prestigious university. However, he is a complete novice in the construction industry. I'm still working here as a plasterer, but the new president doesn't seem to think I'm necessary for the company. As soon as he started talking about restructuring, old-timers like me were the first to be targeted. It seems the decisions are up to him. So, what do you think, Mark? Thinking about the company, could you step down? Given your educational background, you're not really suitable for the company Mr. Johnson wanted to build. The woman talking nonstop with bright red lips, who also serves as the HR and General Affairs Manager, is Emily. Her flashy makeup and condescending attitude are her trademarks. To sum up, she probably thinks that if I say I'll resign, the other craftsmen will follow suit. A high-educated elite team is apparently what Mr. Johnson envisions for a modern construction company. Emily, who would be quite attractive if she weren't so patronizing, continued to talk down. Emily, that's enough. I'll make today my last. I was considering holding out a bit longer this morning, but I'm fed up with her incessant chatter. What? I just said I'm resigning today. Do you need a resignation letter? I can write it right away. For a moment, Emily's eyes sparkled with joy. It seemed she was prepared for my resignation. She handed me one of the envelopes piled next to the sofa and told me to check and write down my signature. She is cunning as a fox. She must have been intended to discharge me from this company today. With one last act of defiance, I scribbled my signature and handed it back to her. This is how I left the company where I had worked for many years and became unemployed. Fortunately, since I had moved out of the company's dormitory and moved in an apartment last year, so I could avoid the emergency situation of having no place to live. But finding a new job will be very tough. The words high school dropout are a shackle on my feet. I feel heavy-hearted instantly. As I packed my personal belongings into a cardboard box and made my heavy-footed way back to my apartment, I came across a groundbreaking ceremony. Normally, you'd expect more attendees, but it was just a young woman and a large dog. The land wasn't too small, so it seemed more like an inheritance from her parents or someone, rather than something she bought herself. She could turn it into a parking lot or build apartments and condominiums. With land, she could earn an income without working. Perhaps there were no other siblings to inherit the estate. As I stood watching the ceremony, the woman turned to look at me as if she felt my gaze. Her light, beautiful almond-shaped eyes focused on me clearly. I smiled lightly, almost instinctively. Then, she smiled back warmly and beckoned to me. Taken aback by the unexpected invitation, I froze for a moment. Then, she whispered something to the large dog sitting beside her. Suddenly, the dog came bounding towards me as if it could fly. It bit my sleeve and tugged insistently as if saying, "Come here." All right, I conceded. Pulled along, I ended up participating in the groundbreaking ceremony. Sitting next to her, the woman was younger than I had thought. It's a bit lonely having a groundbreaking ceremony alone, isn't it? Join me because it's a special occasion. Help make sure my future goes well. She said with an untroubled smile, and somehow, that made me relax. She had this strange charm, a way of taking the edge off people. The groundbreaking ceremony concluded solemnly. Even the master of ceremonies chuckled, saying, "It's a small ceremony, isn't it? But it was a lovely ceremony. I'm glad I insisted on having you join. Thank you so much." She expressed her deep gratitude to the priest. She seemed unconventional, but surprisingly polite. "Well then, nice to meet you. I'm Maddie." thanks for joining the ceremony today," she said, turning towards me and expressed her gratitude. As I was about to rebuke her for being unreasonable, her charm disarmed me. Everything about her was natural and devoid of malice. The way she talks makes me fall under the illusion that nothing is coincidence but everything is supposed to be happened. Well, I have time, and it's nothing to be thanked for, really. I found myself saying the opposite of complaint. That's quite a large plot of land. Are you planning to build a house? If she was planning to live alone, the land seemed quite spacious. Maybe she intends to make a big yard for the dog. I'm planning to build a house to live in with this sweetie. But I don't need a big house, I want to build a small one by myself, she said with an effortless laugh. Build it by yourself? Are you serious? Seeing her optimistic smile, taking building her own house as an easy thing, I was more exasperated than surprised. I know it is not easy since I have by my background in the construction industry. I imported a tiny house from Scandinavia. But I want a contractor to do the foundation. I've asked, but no one seems willing to take the job, she explained. Recently, many people opt not to build large houses, but instead go for tiny houses that can be moved, or small cabins. Mostly, they're used as hobby rooms or stores. With an import from Scandinavia, it must be something serious. I know someone who might be able to help you, if you're okay with that, Maddie? Seeing her genuinely troubled face, I offered to help. Many craftsmen have been laid off at the same time, losing their jobs. If I ask around, surely some will agree to help. I was especially intrigued by the idea of her building her own home. Really? Are you serious? She leaned in so close our foreheads could touch as she pressed for confirmation. She seemed so innocent, so vulnerable. Or perhaps she didn't even see me as a man. I explained my past work and current situation. I didn't mind helping, but I couldn't expect the others to work for free. I asked her to at least pay them something. She agreed without hesitation. Thus, an unusual bond brought Maddie and me together in our daily life. When Maddie came to meet the craftsman, she shook hands with everyone. She held the hands of the older craftsman with both of hers, looked into their eyes, and smiled, saying, "Nice to meet you." Some craftsmen, perhaps embarrassed, had their ears turn red, which was amusing. Immediately after, we unfolded the blueprints for the tiny house imported from Scandinavia and began discussing various details. She seemed to want some renovations as well. It's really small, isn't it? Are you sure this is okay for the future, like if you get married or have kids? Maddie is turning 32 this year. It's an age when many women think about marriage and childbirth. However, there's no trace of such plans in Maddie's life planning. I just need a house where I can live with this little one. I can't live with anyone else, she said. Sitting quietly beside Maddie was her Australian shepherd, called Buddy. His left eye was the pale sky blue. It was my first time seeing a creature with heterochromia up close. It's almost as if you've lived with someone before, I remarked. Don't be rude, I'm actually divorced, you know. Maddie retorted with slightly puffed cheeks. Her being divorced was unexpected. Did I say something wrong? I stammered, a bit flustered. Maddie laughed at me amusingly and said, "No worries." Apparently she divorced her husband because of his infidelity, which she disclosed as if it was no big deal. That's why I prefer being alone. As long as I have Buddy, I'm happy. Listening to Maddie's story, some of the elderly craftsmen seemed moved to tears out of sympathy. Everyone became a fan of Maddie just today. A few days later, parts for a tiny house arrived from Scandinavia. It seemed possible to set it up alone. It was well designed. Maddie hoped to remodel it to expand the plumbing and other facilities based on this model. After many discussions, the foundation work began. Even though the foundation work started, there was no role for me. I had no part in it, but I had time, so I visited the construction site every day. Maddie also spent most of her time at the site. She brought homemade lunches for the workers and was eager to help out with the construction wherever she could. Occasionally, she would receive calls on her phone from overseas, or glare at her laptop at the construction site. And though her job was a mystery, it was clear from her lifestyle that she was not struggling financially. So, Mark, I hear you're a plasterer, and not just any, but an artistically skilled one at that, she began. With that introduction, Maddie made her request. I want to entrust the facade of the exterior walls to you. I want my precious home to be unique, finished by your hands. You can design and do it any way you see fit, she continued. It was as if she knew I had been frustrated at not being able to showcase my skills. I was pleased but couldn't immediately respond. But if it ends up not being to your taste, that would be a problem. I hesitated, even though I was eager to jump at the project. So let's create your masterpiece, Mark, and make customers who won't settle for anyone but you, she said. Her words made me realize something. She wasn't testing my skills, she truly believed in them and was trying to help me promote them. I hadn't been thinking about my future at all, but her words really brought me back to myself. Let's put an end to the rotten times. The future is something you carve out for yourself, right? She probably heard about my situation from other craftsmen who were laid off from the same workplace. Is it sympathy? I sneak a peek at Maddie's profile. She looked at her own home, which she was striving to build, as if gazing at something dazzling. In her eyes, I could see a beautiful future. It's not sympathy. She desires a unique and final home. I'll make it the best. I promise. I murmured softly, and Maddie looked at me and grinned. Let's see your handiwork, then, she teased. It was a provoking phrase on purpose. I had no choice but to mentally wave the white flag. I had been drawn to her since we met. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Today, I rushed to the site from morning. As I approached the site, I can hear Maddie's bursting laughter. True to her word, she worked alongside the craftsman, building the home herself. Even high-altitude work, which she initially approached tentatively, she now handled with ease. Though the tiny house was simple to build, it was interesting to see how much it had transformed with Maddie's personal touch, hardly resembling its original form. For instance, tiny houses often have minimal plumbing, just a shower room. The water facilities were enhanced, as if adding another tiny house to the original. A tiny house just for Maddie and her dog. A 110 square feet living space with specially added plumbing, a loft with a bed and bookshelf. A small kitchen and a personal chair in the living room. That's what a tiny house is. Maddie seemed satisfied that this was the life size to her needs. I was in charge of the front wall of the entrance. The land purchased was larger than the house built on it. Maddie excitedly shared her plans to create a dog run and a rose garden. The vision for the entrance was already clear. The color would be white. A white close to pure white may be better. It would be a fine line whether it blended with the wood or not. The image was of the wind. I intended to represent Maddie's free spirit. Hey, Mark, why did you guys all resign from your jobs at the same time? During lunch, as we spread out the lunch Maddie had brought, she suddenly asked. We exchanged glances, unsure how to explain. The looks said it was up to me to handle. It would be strange to lie, so I decided to tell Maddie the truth about my previous company. I was let go because I only completed middle school. And the other craftsmen were forced into voluntary resignation due to their strong individualities. Which made them difficult to manage, an unacceptable reason, really. Essentially, it was a downsizing layoff, I explained. Changes in management likely contributed too, I added, though it was my personal opinion. All of us were old-fashioned craftsmen confident in our skills, leaving the company without regrets. But after that, none of us had a new life plan or job lined up. Maddie listened quietly to my story. After a moment of silence, she looked at us and smiled. Then, let's start a company. People who can build such a wonderful home should center their business around creating unique, bespoke tiny homes. She suggested. We were stunned by Maddie's casual suggestion to start a company. It sounded like a joke. Maddie gave a bitter smile at our reactions. Then she shared her personal story for the first time. I have the funds to start a business. I got a hefty lump sum from my husband, she disclosed. I heard Maddie's ex-husband was from a wealthy family, involved in resort hotel management and dealing with stocks and inheritance. So money was never an issue for him. Maddie's family wasn't very affluent. Her father was a stable hand for racehorses. Her brother also dropped out of middle school and worked as a stable hand. From a young age, Maddie herself had wanted to work with horses. But she was too beautiful. From the time she graduated high school, Maddie began receiving more and more invitations from various horse owners. These included invitations to meals and trips. By then, she clearly understood the value of her appearance, as she explained. "I decided to marry the man who offered the most money," she said with a slight self-deprecating twist of her lips. We listened intently to her story. Then, she married the aforementioned ex-husband. She was 19 years old at the time. Her married life was like that of a princess. She was cherished, but that was all. Whenever Maddie wanted to start something new, her ex-husband thwarted her efforts. If she expressed a desire to tend to the garden, he would hire a gardener the next day. If she wanted a horse, he would buy a racehorse at auction. She didn't want his money. She wanted a horse to keep by her side. Her husband just didn't understand that. Her patience soon ran out. One day, she slipped out the window and hurried to her family's stables. It was then that she accidentally stumbled upon her husband cheating. The other woman was an older lady with heavy makeup. She was a racehorse owner who seemed to lack genuine affection for horses, merely managing them as assets. Just seeing her husband with such a woman was revolting, but witnessing them embracing and whispering to each other felt like the end of the world. "I've never seen anything so hideous," Maddie shuddered with disgust. Maddie said, shuddering, "It's revolting." She quickly took a series of photos with her smartphone. Of course, the two of them noticed her presence and panicked. She even captured the entire episode on video, laughing about it. "I went straight home and threw out everything he bought me from the room window," she recounted. When she returned to her parents' house and showed the video to her family, they were all distressed. While they understood Maddie's frustration, they were also worried about the risk of their own jobs being jeopardized because of this incident. "It's a small world, after all. I won't let that happen," she declared, marking the beginning of her battle. She demanded a substantial lump sum and secured the transfer of all her ex-husband's horse ownership rights. Her in-laws were very fond of her, and they offered her a significant portion of the inheritance that was originally intended for her ex-husband as a living gift. They also took care of the necessary taxes, so Maddie became wealthy through the divorce. "I still run into that repulsive woman with heavy makeup at the racetrack sometimes, but I put up with it," she mentioned with a laugh that seemed to say it was all behind her. "Are you going to start a company and hire us?" one of the craftsmen initiated. "Not just hire you, but I want to grow a new job together. I'm confident that we can succeed together," she proposed. "I may be young and unreliable, but I want you to entrust your lives to me," Maddie pleaded with us. It seemed like a mysterious coincidence. God does have a way of making things interesting, I mused. "I'll follow Maddie." "It sounds like an exciting new adventure," I declared first. One of the craftsmen teased, "That's because you're smitten with Maddie." "What's wrong with that?" "I'm not some chicken to shy away from such a great woman," I retorted roughly. Maddie watched me with amusement. "I see it as a chance to restart our lives. She's giving us a chance to show off our skills. There's no reason not to join her," I stated, standing up and rallying the other craftsmen. Soon after, they all stood up, agreeing one by one. Maddie had created a new place for us, who had been unfairly forced out of our previous jobs. It was a profound realization that you never know where the best encounters might come from. A year later, our company building was completed. Maddie told me that we could design it any way we liked, so I took charge of the front entrance wall. I depicted the beautiful patterns created by windswept desert sand across the entire wall. Visitors would look up at the wall in the reception area and sigh in admiration. Word of mouth led to an unexpected visit. Our former company's president, Mr. Johnson and George, asked for an appointment with Maddie. "What do you think? If you have something to say, why not spill it all now?" Maddie playfully suggested to the colleagues gathered around. However, everyone just chuckled and shook their heads. "If we show them the company building we've created, even those fools will realize how foolish they were. We're satisfied with that. Our lives have moved steps ahead of theirs," I said. The other colleagues nodded in agreement. Maddie nodded happily too. I decided to keep it a secret that her eyes were slightly moist. That night, while Maddie usually left on time, she absent-mindedly watched the other employees heading home. Some were greeted by their spouses and children, a scene of happiness unfolding before her. "Aren't you going home?" I asked. I think I want to soak in the happiness a little longer. She replied, casting a dreamy gaze. Happy? Yes. Having the best craftsmen gather around me and walking the happiest paths in life, it's the ultimate happiness, she said. Buddy at her feet whimpered affectionately. It seemed to be insisting on its presence to Maddie. She slowly stroked its head, and the dog squinted its eyes contentedly. It seemed there was a bond between Maddie and her dog that I couldn't fully grasp. I guess I'm still a bit unhappy, I mused. What? Aren't you being a bit greedy? You're a sought-after young plasterer. I heard you've even started selling your artistic works. She pointed out. Maddie was well aware of my activities and achievements. Honestly, that alone made me happy, but I wanted just a bit more. What's missing from Mark's wonderful life puzzle? She asked with a grin. It seemed she really wanted me to say it myself. Despite understanding my feelings, I said, aren't you hiding that last puzzle piece, Maddie? Without it, my life just can't be complete. Don't be so mean. I deliberately made my voice sound pitiful. Maddie burst into laughter beside me. Shall we see if the pieces fit? Let me try now. The next moment, Maddie jumped into my arms. She wrapped her arms around my back tightly and clung to me. As she nestled her small head against my shoulder, the scent of her shampoo brushed past my nose. Is this the last piece you were looking for? Her voice trembled slightly. I thought to myself, how silly. I had been showing my affection so clearly, yet she still seemed insecure. I hugged her slender back tightly in response. I can't imagine any other piece fitting better than this. At our feet, Buddy let out a disgruntled whine. As if to say he hadn't given his approval yet. Let's make Maddie happy together. I definitely can't do it alone, so I need your help, I said to him. Buddy only flicked his ears in response. It seemed it would take more time to win him over. If you want to marry me, you'll need to get his approval too. That's the bare minimum. Maddie insisted, looking down at Buddy at our feet. He proved to be a tough one to win over. In fact, it took another year before I could put a ring on Maddie's slender left ring finger. Moreover, the ring bearer at our wedding was Buddy, who, in his final act of resistance, escaped throughout the church. The guests burst into laughter. Eventually, I had to chase him down and capture him. Guests said the battle over the rings between the groom and the dog was a great addition to the wedding. But the reality was no laughing matter, it was a serious challenge. We almost didn't make it to being officially married. Seeing two handsome men fight over me is the ultimate pleasure as a woman. Maddie joked, throwing her bouquet and cheering us on during our chase. I was too desperate to remember, but I'm thinking of asking her, who were you really rooting for, the next time we talk?